the brain of Morbius, is the Time Lords have taken control of the TARDIS, sending the Doctor and Sarah Jane into dangerous territory. On the graveyard planet of Khan, the Eternal Sisterhood fights to keep the sacred flame alive. High in the castle, the brilliant surgeon Mehendri Solon conducts gruesome experiments on living flesh, and as the storm approaches, an evil from the depths of Time Lord history plots its return to the land of the living. But is even the Doctor's mind a match for the brain of Mobius? Now, I have to admit, what's known as the Philip Hincklich Robert Holmes era, which is Philip Hincklich was the producer around this early age of Tom Baker, and Robert Holmes was the story editor. They had a theme going on through most of their stories, which was kind of like the gothic horror hammer film, or just dark stories with really good hit cliffhangers. And this is kind of like the essential of all of it. This one is like the perfect example of all of that, because this is pretty much a Frankenstein story. The setting is like a gothic castle on a cliff. You know, you got a planet that's basically nothing but rocks and ruins and, you know, destroyed ships, and you got a cult in the caves. It was pretty much just the essentialness of that. And it looked beautiful. It was great. And this is actually one of my favorite. Well, it goes down as one of my favorite stories because of all that. It has all the stuff that I love from horror, classic horror, and, you know, all that stuff. So, and the music fitted perfectly too. The way they kind of played Morbius. Voice was great, very amazing, but just the brain itself in this jar was very well done. Yes, it's just a kind of, I'm not going to say, you know, mesh head or something. It was actually looked like rubber or something. I don't know how they made the head, but the head was great, and every time it talked, it blinked. Like there was a light in there, it blinked, and then the jar would bubble up if it was getting agitated. And off to the side next to it, there's another little stand, and the bottom would light up, but this little bit of fabric would start moving when it talked, because that's the vocal cords of Morbius, and they were vibrating whenever it talked. I thought that was a really neat idea. It also gave this kind of creepy, horrifying look to it. And then the Morbius's final form, when the surgeon Solon actually put everything together, he actually couldn't get that proper head, so the head was actually in this spherical jar with these little cones for eyes or something. It was kind of cheesy, but also at the same time creepy, because the rest of the body was put together with different things. There was like a humanic arm, a claw for the other arm, hairy body. It was kind of a weird donkey with a crab arm and a human hand. It was kind of creepy, but at the same time kind of silly. But the voice was very dramatic and scary, and you kind of believed it. The Sisterhood of Karn. This is actually the very first appearance of the Sisterhood of Karn, or the Sisterhood of the Eternal Flame, because they're kind of known recently, particularly because of the 50th anniversary special when they come in. For those who are just, you know, joining me along with the story with Doctor Who, with the classic era, don't really know who they are, who haven't watched the new series. The Sisterhood of Karn appear later on. If you don't want spoilers, just kind of skip past this part a little bit in a couple minutes. But they kind of helped the Doctor in the 50th anniversary, the mini-sode to the 50th anniversary special called The Night of the Doctor, and then later in another mini-episode, and I think another episode in the later series. I have yet to really fully watch the revival series, so I can't really say for sure, because I want to finish the classic era before I really sit down and watch the entire revival series. I've only seen like a handful of episodes from them. So yeah, but they appear later on and actually help the Doctor. And I'll leave it at that, so I won't say much, but it's a really big thing, and I know what it is. So yeah, but for this story, the Sisterhood of Karn were kind of interesting. They do seem kind of like a cult, particularly where they are with the cave and the drapes and the way they dress and the face paint. They do look like a cult, but they're not an evil cult. They actually are part of the Time Lords. They're not Time Lords themselves, but they're in the same galaxy as the Time Lords, and they actually aid them from time to time, because the elixir that they have, there's this flame that's in part of the cave that actually creates this elixir, and this actually, you know, causes immortality. And with Time Lords who have trouble regenerating, they give this to them, and then they regenerate, or just revive them if they're going to die. So it's really cool, and the way the Sisterhood is portrayed is kind of like they kind of seem, like I said, cultish or witchish. But at the same time, it's kind of like they're good people, and the way they kind of think in their old ways is pretty cool. And the actresses who play them do a very good dramatic role. They don't try and make it cheesy. They do it like serious. And so it's pretty cool. And the dress is pretty believable, and the rituals are very well choreographed, and how they chant is very cool, but also creepy as well. The excuse me, the overall sets for everything too is pretty cool too, with the castle that Solon's in. It's kind of believable how they set it up to where there's actually a lower, even though the soundstage, all the sets are like in a row, it's all flat one level. But the way they make it believe that there's several different levels is pretty cool, well edited, put together, and just the design of it is very well done. It just kind of like it kind of made it seem like how our architecture is made, but in reverse, and how it just seems like everything's closing in on them, and it was pretty well done. The overall atmosphere is beautiful, very dark and creepy. I like how I like how it's just that there wasn't enough light most of the time. It was just everything was shadows. The character of Solon was nice. It's not very well developed, but it was still kind of like your classic villain from horror movies. And then with the assistant, the assistant was very well had a nice arc to where he was a servant who was only obeying him because he wanted his arm back, although he later finds out the arm's on Morbius. And how he was just obeying him, but then he comes conflicted because he likes Sarah Jane. He's like Sarah Jane. He's always thought was beautiful, and how he's coming conflicted, and then he realizes, Solon's betraying him, not helping him, and his switch to try and stop him, and that was very well believable and very well done. The overall, this was a great story. I thoroughly did enjoy it. Of course, this is also one of the stories I'm sorry I have to keep on bringing her up, but it's also part of the history of Doctor Who I kind of have to mention along the way. Mary Whitehouse, she kind of attacked this story thoroughly, and again, she just thought it was too scary. The violence, yes, there was a part where Solon's assistant Coron gets shot and blood spurts. Yes, that was a bit violent, but not overly violent. Yes, it may be shocking for little kids, but if you're like a 12-year-old or teen or adult, it's not going to be that bad. But she kind of felt that it was just wrong, and a lot of the story was just wrong. She always thought it was just a kids show, but actually she was kind of watching from the wrong side. And also, to me, if you don't want your kids watching something like that, don't have them watch it. Just change the channel. But also, she just didn't understand that that's what Doctor Who's purpose is. If there's something scary or something problematic, he comes and fixes it. He's a doctor. He fixes it. But also, that was part of the tradition of Doctor Who, to where the kids would hide behind their sofas and watch it through the cracks of the sofa or over the top or off to the side. It was part of the tradition of Doctor Who. And in fact, that still continues to this day, to where there are stories that are dark and scary, like the dark and scary that creep kids out, and that's just part of the tradition, and the kids like it. But she didn't really understand then. But back to this day, people still think Doctor Who's too scary or violent for anybody. But yeah, anyway. But to me, the story is still good. I would actually have my kids watch it if they were okay with it. They would say they're fine with the scary, then I'd be fine with it if my kids wanted to watch it, if I ever have kids. So, yeah, that was all good. It was a good story, nice and solid. And like I said before, this is just showing the series growing up with its audience, and it's like now, okay, with the 70s, now we're going to get more into the teens, affect everybody. The whole family's watching this because, kids, because the parents will watch some shows with their kids, or even the teenagers watch it with their siblings, or blah, 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 blah. So they're kind of making it for everybody. And so she didn't understand that. She also doesn't understand you can just change the channel. But overall, the story was really good. I have to give this one a solid 3 stars out of 5. It was really fun, great, enjoyable, very well done. It was really good. There's not much really else to say about that. There's a lot of good stuff coming in the future. The next story we'll review when I get it is the Seeds of Doom, which is the season finale for this one. I think we're on season 13 now. Yes, so it'll be the season 13 finale, the Seeds of Doom, and I will see you then. There's one other thing I almost forgot. Just one little thing. There's actually this is actually a little bit of trivia, if you actually want to think about it. There's a scene at the end where Morbius and the Doctor have a kind of mind wrestle, and they they put hook up their brains to this machine, and there's a screen that appears, and it shows the different regenerations of the Doctor. You know, first, second, and third. However, it actually shows more faces. This was before. It was later on in the series where it was found out that Time Lords have 12 incarnations, but it was showing faces before the first Doctor, and this is kind of up for debate of whether or not it's actually regenerations of the Doctor or generations of Morbius, because it was kind of up for grabs. But at the same time, you can kind of say maybe these are faces of the Doctor have met or other stuff like that. It's kind of up for grabs. But I thought I completely forgot about that. But I wanted to point that out for Doctor Who fanatics, and to talk about it a little bit. So it's kind of an interesting fact that kind of suggested there were more faces than William Hartnell, Patrick Troughton, John Pertwee, and Tom Baker. But at the same time, it was kind of interesting to say, well, actually, it could be, Morbius, because he was a Time Lord. And even though he was an evil Time Lord, he had other lives before he did what he did to become, that. So, yeah, kind of a nice little history tidbit fact. So, thank you.